in the COVID-19 crisis. And I will leave this question with Mr. Roberto from Microsoft.
Hello everyone. Hope you can hear me well. And apologies if you hear some noise when I connect, because we have the IKEA guys. They came right on time. To your question, there are different trends that we see. For sure, the COVID situation accelerated, awareness on one side, and also adoption of some EdTech solutions, and also we see flourishing a number of ideas when it comes to EdTech. So the challenge that we see is whether the startups and the ideas, what is that they are really trying to solve for. Technology is a means to an end, right? So it's not the end itself. So and you can see, just take for example the distance learning experience that as a parent I've seen my kids going through. So what you have seen happening is schools that moved what was the offline experience into online, and pretending then to offer the same level of engagement and experience that used to happen in the physical school. But that's not that's not the real thing happening. What's really happening is that kids have less attention. Span of attention from home is different. And what we are saying, we're using new technology, is technology that was already there, right? It's moving content on an app, on a tablet, or using emails, or sending video calls with the teachers. So the real questions that I would love to see startups focusing on when it comes to EdTech is all about the learning. So if kids or people are effectively learning through solutions or leveraging startups or EdTech solutions, and also taking into account the broader picture of the different stakeholders that are involved into the equation, which is not just the students or people that need to be reskilled, but also in the case of students is the parents and the teachers, right? So having this more broader approach to what technology and this right for personalization or more interactivity really means, and what is really impacting for, and at what cost. So I think there is still a lot to do, even if definitely the situation has accelerated more adoption of technology and more ideas coming out from the EdTech space. And we see a number of startups we are collaborating with in the region and globally that have brilliant ideas. We are eager to support. Still, on a provoking side of things, is also how we can, build solutions that take into account also the positivity effect of, kids or students or workers, interacting physically, and developing admiration for their teacher. That those magical things that happen in the moment when you are physically at school or in a physical environment. How that can be leveraged, by technology, with technology or startups, EdTechs that are building into this space.
Abby, do you have any follow-up answer to that? Because from what I know that you're an EdTech expert and you've been consulting in various.
So, well, globally, like Startup Bootcamp globally has invested in over 900 companies, and we have quite a bit of EdTech companies on board, obviously. Actually, in our last cohort in Dubai for Dubai Smart City, one of the companies was pure EdTech company. But what we're seeing also, we're seeing a lot of companies who were not really EdTech focused now pivot into more EdTech focused businesses. We have a couple of companies that were collaboration tool companies for companies, like mostly they do collaboration and all sorts of sort, have now customized the products for schools and universities. So we're seeing a lot of that pattern obviously cater to the needs of what's happening right now, especially, as my colleague said, the norm has changed from this classroom environment to this virtual classroom. And there has been a lot of EdTech in the last couple of years, But right now, I think refining the product and actually finding exactly what people are looking for is the perfect time. Not only that, we actually also are now investing in the ecosystem around EdTech, which means more tools for teachers, online tools, which means also mentoring platforms. The platform we invested in just recently was a tutoring platform for students that want to get tutored for a specific subject. So there is so it's really not only like it's driving the whole ecosystem around the whole EdTech experience. You know what I mean? And we have actually, because Rainmaking, the mother company of Startup Bootcamp, is a boutique tech consulting firm. We have been talking to global players and global school boards about how they can automate or actually virtualize and digitize some of their other non-studying based platforms, and so we are building ventures with them. So that space is big.
Sorry. Sorry to interrupt you, but I would make it for the question is because you've been already in the EdTech kind of.
Sure.
What was the challenges that you faced recently? And I will talk about more of an increase and also client retention.
Yeah. Okay. So for the client experience, obviously, we're ironing out. Suddenly the scale of the capacities of these platforms had to be really scaled up because these companies were, opening up classrooms for 15 to 20 people, and now, suddenly we're getting an influx of hundreds of people joining certain mentoring and tutoring. So there was a lot of capacity issues with that. There was also development issues on to get more content, and content's always going to be one of the biggest issues in this business because it's one thing having people to talk, but actually built-in content because and then the biggest thing after that is testing to making sure that everybody gets tested properly. So there is a lot of issues that are being popped up with EdTech that's being addressed.
And ask a question to Mr. Saad, because Saad, he joined us Saad has education and also consultancy kind of background. How do you? Yes, how are you, Saad?
I'm very good, thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Just to highlight the questions that were just our gentlemen were answering. Where do you leverage all those platforms that we're looking at, Zoom, WebEx, through Edtech technology, and how is it so far?
Absolutely. I think it's very important to be able to integrate with the main platforms today, namely Zoom for us here in the US. A lot of the universities here that we're working with have adopted a full-on Zoom strategy. So for us as an EdTech startup that pushes for social engagement, communication, and collaboration, it's important for us to be able to easily integrate with a tool like Zoom, be able to share the events on our platform, create the links, allow the users to join from our EdTech solution and get to the room in a simple manner without having to navigate the intricacies of a platform like Zoom. So we're trying to facilitate that onboarding. But what I'm also seeing pertaining to the question of how EdTech and consulting is evolving, before this, we weren't really a consulting firm. We were just an EdTech startup. But because of the crisis, because EdTech has moved from this nice to have for certain institutions to this must have, we're having to act like consultants. We're having to guide certain schools that didn't really know how to engage with their students online. And it's kind of turning us into a part-time consulting firm rather than just an entirely startup service.
Yes. Do you guys do a lot of on-site, or does it affect you so much in the end? Because you said you're talking more of a consultancy focus now, and how did it affect you guys, especially going to visit, pitching your services again, and especially that you guys come from a very early stages in a startup, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. For us, this was a very important year. We had a lot of meetings booked from March to May. All of them were on-site. They were meetings with college presidents, as well as college provosts and the higher ups there. So we were really excited about those meetings. So obviously everything got canceled all at once, and we hadn't heard from some universities for weeks at a time, and we had to be there reaching out at not only the presidents but the people who actually were dealing with the problem, the faculty, the students, the mediators, the people that were actually managing the social communication for the universities. So we started reaching out, and we got an overwhelming positive response of people that just wanted us to help them. So for a second, we stopped thinking about revenue, we stopped thinking about meetings, but we just wanted to be there to help, and we knew that it would pay back. And now that COVID is starting to move along, we're getting a lot more paid customers and a lot of more people signing up for the platform. So I'd say just helping out can pay off sometimes in a time of crisis.
Yeah, that's I will ask the same question to from a person who does, I believe, 80 to 90% more of some sort of an on-site kind of services and also advising. How did it impact you in the recent, this last period of COVID-19? And where do you see it? Did you find more challenges? Where do you find more opportunities through it?
Hi, everyone. So for me, this really was a period of opportunity because everyone was moving online. And so for me, like a large part of my business was already online because I work with clients, all across the world. So they already had the need to have that virtual aspect to it. I used to have a lot of physical events as well, like in-person events. So obviously they got canceled in different speaking engagements. But then, you need to adapt quickly. So moving everything online and being one of the first people to be there, having events, because then there was that influx, like everyone was going online together. So then the challenge became, how do you stand out amongst that really busy crowd now? Because everyone was doing online events, everyone's doing Instagram lives and everything else. So then it became, how do I really understand what my clients' challenges are in this particular period? And how can I really speak to that specific challenge and actually cater an event or to tailor that content to really support them what they're going through now, even if that's different to what I would have been speaking about before. But I think in any time, and I think that for this as well, it's in any time of challenge, you need to look for an opportunity and really turn up and see how can I give value to my clients in a different way.
So as you just mentioned, how do you provide some sort of a value to our clients? What do you do in these cases to retain them?
So I have very good customer retention as it is with the clients that I work with. I'm grateful to be able to say that. But it's about being a bit creative about what kind of other offerings can I add into my service as it is. So for me, it's like, building out some additional online courses, getting experts involved. So it's not just the specific experience of myself, but then my community, the people that I work with, can get access to different experts in my own network. And it's just to try and find new ways to keep your community engaged in a meaningful way that's going to be relevant to them. So working with different people from, in the same kind of pool, but maybe with a different expertise, and actually giving them access to those people as well. They have found that really valuable and helpful.
Interesting. Just want to move that similar with Rohan. Are you with?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. But moving from more of a retaining, the most challenging element at the moment is how we could attract a new audience and new clients with the providing new problems solving. As this is something I think most of us are facing, is how we reach a new client, and specifically when we go for a bigger deals, people usually avoid us when they did not meet us before or don't have that some sort of an eye-to-eye contact before to trust that service or that person. Or do you get the question?
I do, yeah. So I think your question is, how do you get new wave of clients who are ready to pay you?
Yes.
Because you're not really meeting anyone and everything is virtual. So yes, one of my biggest, highest paying clients this year were actually wanting to have me in-house with their teams. And now that COVID has happened, we had to discontinue in 2 months because I could no longer see their teams. But then at the same time, we had this arrangement where I could continue supporting their teams virtually because that's what the new norm is. And what is interesting to me is, as a person who is a digital evangelist, it is a time for opportunity for all of us, as I see, because the companies who absolutely could become virtual and digital were even operating, on site. There was no need for it. There is so much of the money that can be saved by just moving on cloud. If the entire Silicon Valley was in cloud, imagine the kind of impact and the scale onto which we would be working. So, addressing the question as how would you look for new clients, I would suggest is to go through a list of all the previous clients that you had and identify if you think that you can step into it. Let's say, for example, I had Kalyan Jewelers as one of my major clients in India and in Dubai, and they have physical stores as well as the e-commerce that they have. So right now, as we know that the physical stores of Kalyan Jewelers would be shut down, so what they would want to do is focus on the online sales. And as the gold prices are going down, these jewelry e-commerce can actually boom if for people who are looking to invest. So I reach out to these past clients where I see there is an opportunity for them, and I try to inform that this is what we can do, this is the plan you can go ahead with. And like one of our panelists suggested, this is really the time where you do not want to look like an opportunistic person, but really try to help and serve people, and eventually that would convert in a sale, or in a way it will turn out to be, even if you're trying to just help someone and advise, it's not that just based on your advice they're going to actually do something. They would need your help, and that's when you can pitch your services to them. Similarly, if anyone is operating in any other industry, they can see what industry they are in, they can map the problem, provide solution, and eventually close.
Just because you use a lot of on-site kind of solutions and being very close to the client, do you see that need today? Is it that must, or a very important kind of element that have to be, or from this period, and what did you see that it actually could be? Because we see a lot of on-site consultants, and do you think from now and then post the period of COVID-19, do you think the people will relook at how they want to have their consultants? Do you think there will be a less need of people to be on-site or not?
Yeah, so I used to do both digital as well as on-site, and on-site projects were usually paid very well versus digital. But now that for everyone there is a level playing field now, I think, of course, the demand for consultants like us will be on the rise because every business is now trying to go virtual. So let's say, for example, something like as small as a grocery store in your local area versus someone like a large enterprise trying to shift online, the entire team. Everyone would need consultants like us who have experience of working with digital teams as well as on-site teams, and the people who really understand the on-site elements would be able to suggest better that how they can help these on-site teams transition to digital.
Good. Going on to different is how does Edtech Startups and Businesses can surpass competition during this COVID-19 situation? I would ask this question to Mr. Roberto. Mr. Roberto, are you with us?
I am. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. As you're an expert in startups, how do you think through this period that we can surpass those competitions?
So that's a good question. That's a very good question. So let's step back and think that in 1913, someone like Thomas Edison predicted that books were soon to be obsolete, and that was not the true, right? It's evident. And then when the internet came, science fiction, right? So so I would say one of the things that one of the questions that we want to see startups solve for is if this increased focus on tech. So there is no point on the conversation we had so far that the current situation accelerated something, right? So more people are online, more people are aware. Sometimes there is no choice. So people are kind of forced in a way to leverage more of the technology solutions out there. But does this increased focus on tech and digital learning necessarily equal improved learning outcomes? I think one of the areas where the EdTech solutions still fall short in a way still is this inability to participate in the outcome measurement. For example, on one hand, think about the whole education system. You cannot get rid of exams, right? So no matter if technology, how engaging the content is, how cleverly it's packaged, and even if you build an experiential learning system, still there are some roadblocks there that are the big problems. So the way to overcome competition is, I would say, to keep it short, is to think about competition differently and to focus on the right problems. And this is where we see that startups that are kind of reimagining the future and not just reacting. So a lot of the edtechs turned now into, if you can allow me the analogy, they are now more painkillers than vitamins. Because they kind of leverage the situation to react to the COVID situation. But when it comes to education, maybe that was not exactly the point. The point is how we can enable a good quality of teaching in a new world where we probably should blend an offline online experience or an home or in school experience or whatever it is from anywhere. So how do we enable good quality of teaching? How do we enable learning? So users will be probably more learning while they will be doing something, which is a different context than where users were before. So so those startups that redefine competition, that focus on the problem, that think about user experience, those would be the weapons or the approach that we see that are going to be successful.
So in terms of experience, again, going back to you, Roberto, people and most of the clients can react to the new education system and new ways of looking, for example, at an MBA from now on. If everything going to be online, but maybe do you see any? Did you notice some sort of different clients moving to different kind of educations, or does it affect the experience of being physical with someone and getting that kind of a full experience of networking and exchanging knowledge? I would say.
Yeah. What we see is that where we see a good framework or good approach is where there is openness in terms of thinking, how to blend, a real experience into reskilling people. So, for example, if we think about, the upcoming recession and unprecedented job losses we see right now, right? What they might end up doing, they might end up generating a lot of micro entrepreneurs. It's either by desire or need, right? So one area that we see some cool startups are focusing on is how to support these micro entrepreneurs who want to become creators, to capitalize on the passion economy, how to empower them with the skills that they need to build and sell products and generate a good living for themselves. So this is one hot trend, and this is something that might be very relevant going forward. Also, another area is still in the terms of reskilling, is how do you support workers in the gig economy in terms of career development, mentorship, even financial advancement. Knowledge workers are becoming more remote and take maybe more and more on contractor or gig opportunities. So how to replicate the services and support system that traditionally was handled by the HR or L&D departments within corporates. So how to enable this distributed workforce to continue upskilling, advancing in their careers, getting rewarded for their growth. So here we see a couple of trends where there are cool startups that are trying to redefine or redesign or reimagine how this could work in this new normal.
Going back, we are still in the same topic because you also have a very some sort of a consultancy and education kind of background and experience. Where do you see the learning and development and the professional experience will change if we continue with the COVID-19 period during and COVID-19 period?
It's a very good question. I think learning in general, as mentioned by some of my fellow panelists here, like Roberto, is fundamentally changing, and the need for higher learning to also reevaluate itself, right? Cambridge and some of the big Ivy League schools are also looking at a fully digital strategy in 2021. So what is the value of a campus experience if you're having a purely virtual experience? So I definitely believe that education in itself fundamentally is going through a bit of an identity crisis, let's say, and reevaluating how we are doing things. So I think the need to reskill and to relearn and to do smaller micro courses will become much more popular, especially as you mentioned with the gig economy and the knowledge economy. We're looking at platforms that can help you reskill and relearn things that are not necessarily a 4-year degree, but maybe 1 or 2 months. So you can learn how to code, or you can learn about marketing or growth hacking. It's not necessarily a 4-year degree, right? And technology is changing all of our industries. It's changing all of our lives, especially in a COVID world. So it's very interesting to see the need to reskill, to relearn, and to adapt. So I definitely think that from an EdTech perspective, we will see more of a focus on shorter courses, shorter certificates as well. And I hope employers will also start recognizing that. So you have amazing initiatives here in the UAE with His Highness Sheikh Mohammed for programs like 1 million Arab coders. That is also promoting, coding and then helping Arab youth get new jobs and new opportunities through coding. So it's amazing to see the mentorship programs and the opportunities that we've also supported in partnership with 1 million Arab coders, see how that's working. So I think that will definitely be a trend moving forward in the EdTech space. And as you said, in consulting, everyone's now used to an online world, and people who were resisting it before are more open to it now as well. So I definitely think there's a consumer behavior shift that we will see even in a post-COVID world. So people will have, yes, maybe a physical space or a campus to meet, but more and more is happening remotely. So it will be very interesting to see what the new normal will look like.
Yes. Do you think there is some sort of problems at the moment, especially to identifying the effectiveness of those courses, those learning and development programs? And because this phase is pretty new for most of the people, but definitely it will come with a lot of challenges.
Definitely. I think the biggest challenge here is because technology is changing so fast, something that you might learn in a coding degree is already outdated by the time that you graduate, right? So I think definitely the shorter courses adapt the content to being more relevant. And I think that's the beauty of the shorter course approach. But I think on the other side, employers need to recognize that these are actual skills. Because before we would validate a piece of paper that said you had a 4-year degree or a 3-year degree, whatever your degree was. But now the need to reskill and to relearn and to be open to continuously be learning, I think is a very important skill that employers need to also recognize and to appreciate. So I think that's definitely a mindset that happens on both the employer side, but also as us, all of us, as in our career, to reskill and to be open to continuously be learning.
Yeah, and how you can ensure that those potentials of those or the people who want to grow this learning experience.
There are many programs that are opening up now, and I think you'll see the bigger Ivy League schools also offering shorter, more modular courses. And of course, a lot of it is now free. There's a lot of free content out there. But how do you ensure that personal connection? How do you ensure that people complete those courses? Because as we know, MOOCs, or massively open online courses, as they're called, have a very high dropout rate, up to 90%, 90. So how do we continue to have a personalized connection and make sure people complete those courses? And I think that's something that all the educationalists and technologists need to work on together to make sure that we find ways to make content more engaging, more personalized learning, as Roberto said, and still having that human connection. So even though we're not meeting physically, how do we connect human to human? How do we make sure you have those sparks and those moments that you have with those teachers?
Yeah.
So I think that's really, in essence, how can technology be that tool to facilitate those connections?
Roberto, just a quick question, because you're in a Microsoft organization. How do you identify the need of learning and development or new training for people in your industry? Because as we know in this period specifically, that it's going to be more of a cost effective, but at the same time, we need to readapt to it really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a great question. So first of all, Microsoft, and before that I've been working with Google. So these companies, these big tech companies, have this embedded in their DNA. It's part of the culture. So it comes with culture. So culture is important. Culture means that what Tia was referring to before as mindset. We ground our culture on a growth mindset. That means, forget about your degree, your certificate, what you got in the past. It's lifelong learning. Every situation that you are into is learning. Even failure is learning. So this is the first point, mindset. The second thing I would mention is, yes, this need of, employer versus employee, or even teachers versus student. So we said before, one of the barriers is, edtechs cannot get rid of the exams. So you need to measure the outcome in a way, and you still need to rely to the certification, right? So, but one thing that Microsoft or these companies do is, for employees, it's always a continuous learning. There are mandatory learnings. There is a wealth of learning opportunities. And again, it's very embedded into the culture. So the other point is, one GM I've been working for in one of these companies, was holding a kind of a career-related forum, and he was saying, if you don't invest in yourself, why should I? So it's also your own initiative as a person, and how you look at things to decide, because there are multiple opportunities today, to keep learning, and to do something. So to really do something. How we identify then the needs is in different ways. By nature, Microsoft is engaged with many customers globally at different levels, from large enterprises to corporates to small, medium businesses. So those daily interactions inform us of where we see, the future of work, where we see the conditions changing. So where we see a need for reskilling or upskilling, workers. At the same time, we have large education function working very closely with university and schools. So there we also have a lot of inputs and data to understand where and what content to provide to be relevant and to provide skills that students or future workers can need to enter into the market. We collaborate a lot with corporates on practical things. We do a lot of code labs, hackathons, so very practical things where internships where students are exposed in doing things. So education per se is not a value. If you put education on a wall, nothing happens. But if you tell someone to do something, that's action, right? It's actionable. So that's where the whole thing starts. And also it's about incentivize and measure. So the role models and how, and this is part of the culture. The metrics that you set are important. So how many companies are setting metrics or OKRs, and they reward their employees because either they learn something new or they fail. These companies have systems to, for example, you can give kudos to your colleagues for something great that you do, or for something you learn from them. This is just an example. So there are many of these little things that are part of the culture where you basically, the role model or what you measure or what you bring up to your employees as success implies that you are constantly learning.
Yeah. Thank you. Hand it to Hasib for more of a speaker-specific question. Are you with us?
So thank you, Mustafa, for moderating the panel until now. So we are here with some speaker-specific questions that we have received from our participants while an audience across social media while we were actually disseminating this event across. So the first one comes for Abe 66. So this question says, how Startup Bootcamp as an accelerator is responding to COVID-19, considering the fact that there is a lot of risk and opportunities involved simultaneously during the pandemic situation?
Okay, so we have actually moved into a virtual delivery mode where globally now we're delivering our programs obviously virtually because keep in mind most of our programs are we scout companies mostly globally. They come in. So in our last program in Dubai, we had half of our companies came from outside of the UAE as far as the US and as far as Australia. So, but we've moved everything online. So we gave all the workshops, we did all the networking, we did all the all the investor relationship meetings online. So the program became completely virtual. So, and that's what's been happening right now for all the programs globally, in other offices across the world.
Yeah, I just saw that Startup Bootcamp hosted Osaka yesterday itself, and that was online only.
Yes, it was a big event for us.
Yeah, that's really great. So there is another one for you, Abe. So the question says, since startup accelerators are also operating 100% virtually, do you think that an edtech or online mentorship model is being followed here? Does this have the potential to become a standard post-COVID-19?
In all fairness, we were starting to look at. So we run two types of programs: an accelerator program and a scale up. Scale up are for usually more established businesses. Those are more virtual anyway. So we started doing them almost a year and a half ago, before even COVID, and we were testing the water with it. But in all cases, you know how the essence of human networking, they needed to be in the same under the same roof kind of thing, and that's I think what startups are struggling with, that need for that human interaction. But for content wise and for the delivering part, that's been virtual for almost a year and a half now. So we're now applying that model to the accelerator model as well. So it just speeded up the whole. We were thinking of bringing it online, but now with this COVID-19 situation, it accelerated us adopting that platform as well online.
All right. So, okay, thanks for the wonderful answer, Abe. And we have the next question, and I think this should be answered by Rohan. So, Rohan, are you with us?
I am.
Yeah, Rohan. So, Rohan, there's a question that says, any marketing and lead generation tactics which you can work like, which you would like to suggest, and they could work like a charm for startups working in the education sector and for consulting firms as well. So this is just basically the question, the person who's asking the question wants to know the kind of growth hacking tactics or the digital products that one can develop if that person is working in edtech or consulting sector.
All right. So for specifically for edtech startups, I work with one of the largest edtech startups in India, that is called Upgrad. And I've been, running marketing campaigns for them for the last 2 years as an external consultant, of course. And what we have done is we always had influencer marketing as one of the main strategies to get students enrolling in our MBA programs, which are in partnership with a lot of universities. So this again, COVID situation is an opportunity for us, given that a lot of universities would not now want to have their degree programs online, and they can always collaborate and work together with an existing edtech platform like Upgrad or any other. And the bright side here is that quality education previously was a distant dream for, maybe second and third tier cities in a country like India, and especially for the global edtech platforms. Now, the countries with the most young audience are the biggest market to capture. The same goes with the universities as well, who will be now starting to have their, who will now starting to join the edtech wave. Uh, Talking specifically about the strategies that we employ. So I think one obvious strategy is to tweak the messaging as per what is relevant right now. So pre-COVID, of course, when COVID never arrived, the focus more was to targeting the people who want to upscale and learn new skills while not leaving their existing jobs. Now that the target audience is students and working professionals who want to upscale, and they have to upscale not by choice, but it is mandatory given that so many new technologies they have to now work with. So our entire marketing campaigns are focused on the messaging that upscaling is the only way to prevent, losing the job and the future opportunities. So that is one way. The second is for companies who I usually work with is SaaS startups, software as a service, and every SaaS has been serving a different industry. So what is important here is to offer um, not directly the products or services, but to have a more sensitive approach towards how you're going to. So now your target audience is already problem aware. Your job is to make them solution aware, and then eventually drive them down to your funnel to make them your product and your service aware. And how we do that is by running, special offers or special kind of onboarding. So let's say, for example, if I am a software tool that allows salesperson to, carry out their entire buyer's journey online. So previously, if I was meeting with clients one-on-one, now I may want to do it online. And let's say if I'm offering that tool to carry out the entire sales journey on an online platform. So we would have like special onboarding for these people to really understand how they can shift their entire operations online. So there is more education involved. There is more consultative selling involved rather than just blatantly trying to sell a product or service.
All right. So there's a continuation to this question from one of the participants, Rohan. So he's asking that what about priorities now? Where shall we, as LMS means Learning Management System companies, concentrate on for the coming? Would virtual classroom be on top of everything else, or how would you plan for the coming period?
Okay. Let's break down the question. Starting with answering about the virtual classrooms. So, like I said, now it has actually become a level playing field for everyone, and maybe now and in the future, the future can be about hybrid learning where we have partial classroom experience and partial online experience. Let's say for the startup I currently work with, Upgrad, what we do there is we have online courses which are pre-recorded. Then we have live lectures, and then we have one-on-one training with the people and the mentors. And then we have forums and collaboration platform where students can interact and collaborate with each other for projects. And then eventually we also have some, on-site training. So what is happening here is it is one of the challenges of learning online is that the engagement. You never know if the participant will follow through the entire course because it's a no-touch process. If it is 100% pre-recorded, so we try to involve a lot of collaborations with the mentors as well as the fellow students, and the model. I think hybrid learning is the future, even in the post-COVID world. Maybe we will have partial classroom experiences and partial online. What was the second part of the question?
Yeah. Yeah. So the next part of the question is specifically related to LMS companies. So LMS is the learning management system. So what about the priorities now? Where shall we as LMS companies concentrate? So, there are so many lectures are being conducting these days on Zoom and
Right.
other tools like WebEx and most of them. So, what do you suggest for the LMS companies? Like there are many other tools like GoToMeeting and other tools which were being used as the learning management system. So they are facing a stiff competition due to Zoom and other tools these days. So
Right.
what are your suggestions for them?
Sure. So of course, every tool will have its own unique selling proposition. Let's say, for example, a tool like Zoom, someone may not want to use it because of the privacy issues that prevail. But at the same time, it's all about how you're solving the problem of your customers and what the messaging is that, what messaging are you trying to send out to your target audience. So the first thing I would want these startups to do is focus on retention, because this is not really the time when you will be able to make the records of sales. But what you can do is to focus on the top of the funnel, that is acquisition, and towards the bottom of the funnel, that is retention. And rest in between can be taken care of in the future. So once you have a lot of acquisitions happening, eventually through maybe because of the COVID offers that you must be running, so once the acquisition is sorted and then the retention is planned for, eventually the conversion of the future will increase and you can get the market share. The second would be to scale the tech infrastructure as much as you can, because you never know when your product will get that influx of traffic in leads. So number 2 point is definitely at least scaling or preparing to be ready for scaling the tech infrastructure. And lastly is again the special onboarding process that I always talk about is really trying to bring your customers to the uh, uh, we call it the North Star matrix. So identify what is the North Star matrix for your business. North Star matrix is something that will deliver value to you as well as your customer. So for, let's say, for a LMS startup, for an online learning platform, the best judgment for North Star matrix would be that what is providing immediate value to you as an owner and to your end customers. For from externally, I can say that it could be number of number of hours of content consumed. So the more number of content that is consumed, it brings value to you as the owner, and then that means also that the more content that is consumed, it brings value to your users. So you have to really identify what the North Star metric is for you, and then focus on improving that.
Thank you so much, Rohan, for the extensive answer. So I have a question. I think it's best if Saad could answer this. So the question says, will EdTech will EdTech get education to the masses where over 600 million children do not have basic education? So I think this question is particularly related to tier 3 areas and where internet facility is not available. So how EdTech can reach those areas? What do you suggest?
Absolutely. No, that's a very important question. And access to education is taken for granted, but that's not the case in many areas. I'm actually originally from Morocco, and there are some areas where internet was not available and still isn't. But I know governments all over the world are doing all they can to have internet everywhere, especially in the time of COVID. We're understanding that sometimes the only thing that can keep us connected with others is the internet. To be able to connect on Zoom, to be able to connect with people on social networks, and that goes for learning and EdTech as well. Our platform is a social network for education, allowing students to come together all around the world. And we officially launched the early access to our public network, and anyone over the world will be able to sign up as long as they have a student email and they can prove it. And we're doing that for free, understanding that we can help these segregated places or third world countries that don't have the access that everyone has here today in the US and in the UAE and so forth. But what I'm seeing is even companies like Microsoft and Facebook and so forth are finding ways to bring access to internet to these areas. And I think it's very important because today it might be the only way certain people can learn. And it's a lot more cost effective when you're able to have free videos, when you have free content that people can engage with. But for me, what matters as well is to be able to transmit that type of content in a user-friendly way where these people can learn with a click of a button in a format that they're accustomed to.
Let us just take one question that is, it's related to consulting. I think Laura could answer this. There's a question that says, what are the expected requirements for clients along cost reduction, and what tools are consultants preparing as a response? So this is regarding providing additional discount and cost cuttings and competition amid the pandemic situation for the consultants. Consultants like you or any person working or firms in working in the consultancy domain. So everybody is providing discounts and offers, but how do you actually beat this cost reduction strategy of others for your competitors?
Great. So just to be clear, so in terms of consulting, we work with individuals predominantly. So if this is a question specifically for companies, that might be a different answer. But for me and my business, when I always get asked this question around competition, I find it a very interesting question because I think when you start focusing on competition, you start looking at a very scarcity mindset and you start thinking that there's one pie and we're all trying to fight for the one pie. But the reality is that there's an abundance of clients out in the world, especially in a global economy that we work in. So I never really focus on competition because I think the minute I start taking my eye off what I'm doing and really how I'm serving my clients and I start looking at what everyone else is doing, I'm already falling behind. And competition, if you start looking at it and overanalyzing it, can often lead us to some form of imitation, in which case we're always second. So I never focus too much on what other competition are doing. I always look at, what are my clients' specific needs right now and how can I really turn up and best serve them. In terms of discounts, it's not something I engaged with in my company. And I've actually seen my company grow since COVID because more clients are reaching out because they want to leave, say, the corporate world and actually start their own businesses. So, for me, I always think when a client can invest in themselves and they actually want to make that investment, they're far more committed to it versus if I cut my prices, in which case then their commitment is often less. And I think we've seen that on those open platforms where we have free training for everything. It's like people's fallout rates are very high. So I think, given my mission and my business, it's really to create incredible transformations for my clients. And a part of that is actually them investing in themselves first. So I haven't gone down the route of discounts, and I might be different to everyone else on this call. But that was the approach that I've taken, and I find that actually worked quite well. But perhaps someone else or the other speakers might have a different angle on that.
All right. Thanks for the answer, Laura. So there is one question that it is specific to GetBee. The question says, how's GetBee is responding to COVID-19? Any new product or service did you try building, or any initiatives for startups and small businesses? So the person asking the question is running an e-commerce startup, and GetBee is a solution for e-commerce. So you just have to answer it in light to that thing.
Sure. So just to give everyone context, our history was in EdTech, so we've helped digitally transform education. But we've certainly pivoted in the time of COVID-19 also to provide more for healthcare, virtual consulting, coaching, mentorship, and more. So we help businesses essentially create their own virtual platforms that links everything from booking, billing, branding, and more. So on the topic of startups, we've actually created a startup offer to help the startup and SME community get online. And we've also done a lot around social impact with social enterprises. For example, in Latin America, we've launched Aquí Estoy, which is a social enterprise crowdsourcing mental health experts to help people with anxiety, depression in isolation. So they're using our platform to deliver live mentorship and also live coaching and therapy sessions. So it's a very exciting time. Of course, it's a challenging time, but it's an exciting time for people who are digitally transforming, because in any crisis, as we said, there's an opportunity. So in relation to e-commerce, we're actually seeing a big trend from a retail perspective. We're launching now with Shell Hoop Group a virtual concierge and virtual consulting platform where you can talk to a beauty expert, a skincare expert, or even a fashion stylist for brands like Faces, Dolce & Gabbana, just to name a few, where you can actually book a live consultant and talk through products together. This is linking to a wider e-commerce strategy so you can get your products delivered on demand. But it's very exciting to see how industries are digitally transforming. We also have a very open mindset. If you'd asked me 6 months ago, how can e-commerce use your platform? I would have never seen this use case. So I think it's very important as a tech company to stay open, to stay agile, and to see these opportunities and to take those moments and to find and work with the right partners, of course. So we're very excited to provide impact and to provide support for the social enterprise and startup community by offering a special startup package, but also helping larger enterprises still digitally transform during this time. I hope that answered your question.
So many colleges and universities are worried about their students' data and privacy. So this personal thing that we have worrying about something. So I'm asking your opinion. Do they really need to worry about this thing, the colleges and universities, about privacy concerns?
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I think universities should worry about privacy concerns, especially if the students are trusting the university with their data and are expecting the university to hold their data accountable. That being said, universities should also keep in mind that they can't just host things on public social networks like Facebook's. A lot of universities are leveraging these third-party tools that have been known to not be very private. A lot of students are being forced to create social media accounts on platforms like Facebook, even if it's against their beliefs and they don't feel comfortable sharing. Sometimes people have profiles where they have a past, they have a history, they have their family on Facebook. They don't necessarily want to share that entire part with other students, and they're being forced to. So I understand the schools that are trying to do that because they're trying to find solutions for these students. But for me, privacy is very important. It's a very important matter to all my generation, and people are more and more aware of the concerns of privacy. And I think schools should work together to find solutions to make sure that they have private spaces for students to share and collaborate without having to breach their privacy.
All right. So is there something that an integration between technology and people that can be made in order to ensure that there is no more worry for the universities and students? They don't need to, there's no more discrepancy in information. Like there are tools that says that we are 100% encrypted, but it's still later on we find out that those tools are actually leaking information for the students and universities. So how can a person, if I am a person who wants to teach students online, and I really need to make sure that I am safe. So every tool says that, like with Zoom, we have many such instances. They say that they are 100% encrypted, but things like that happen. So one, how can that person identify that?
Absolutely. I think it's the job of the university to do a pretty deep and thorough research on the company and on the tool they're using before purchasing it on an enterprise-wide level. I don't think it's for the student to be able to do their due diligence on the company before that. It's the responsibility of the university with all the resources that a lot of universities have to do so. I can speak for my part because we are a social network, and we decided to take a pretty strong stance and have student-owned accounts. So students on our platform own their private accounts and have lifelong access. So different from an LMS where the university is the one that owns the accounts and provides it to the student and is able to do what they want with the data. In our case, we've provided the control in the student's hands. We want the students to be able to know that their data is theirs, that we're not going to sell it to advertisers at all, and they're going to keep their account safely in their hands lifelong. And it's our job as a company to make sure that we can live up to that commitment, that we have to be able to do security checks, that we're contracting third-party firms that are experts in the loopholes that we can't fill. And I think every company should be very serious and responsible with student data today. especially knowing that today we have a lot more visibility with all the online engagement during a time of COVID, and people have their cameras on all the time. So I think it's a concern that everybody should take seriously, both the companies as well as the universities and the institutions. But I don't believe it's the job of the actual user to think about that. It should be for granted. Okay.
Just a quick question to you, Saad.
Absolutely.
Yes, because from a startup perspective and from a person like you who goes and finds solutions, so definitely there's a problems going on. What's the main problems that you're facing when you engage with a new client, and how do you identify the new solution to them? So what's the process identifying what is the problem, and how then later you can identify the solution?
Absolutely. I think one big problem that we were facing before COVID is that people were not realizing how important it is to really focus on the student experience online. I know Roberto mentioned this earlier, and student experience and user experience is very important if we want to see more engagement. And the biggest concern for a lot of institutions is how do we improve outcomes? But they're not asking themselves the question that there is a two-step process to be able to improve student outcomes online. And the first step is to create the engagement, to be able to have a bigger piece of the pie, a bigger piece of visibility into the students' actions online. Because of the way that
what is what is those engagement tools?
Absolutely. So right now, the engagement we're seeing in universities is primarily based on the LMS. So whether it's Canvas, Moodle, Blackboard, students are online. We can see what they're doing, what they're submitting. We can see when they submitted their homework. We can see what files they're clicking on. And those are valuable data points. But the truth is that students only spend a few minutes a day on the LMS. It's very prescriptive, and they don't have the ability to communicate, collaborate, and to have that sense of personal freedom that they have on social networks like Facebook, where we get a lot of engagement and the company gets to analyze all that data. So I think education has to move forward and to give more freedom to the student and the ability to express themselves and have more actions and engagement, so we have a bigger piece of the pie. When we have a bigger piece of the pie, we'll be able to have more data, and that data will allow us to direct it towards outcomes, which is like retention rates, being able to graduate on time, what classes a student should take to be able to succeed later on or to get a certain job. All those valuable metrics we'll be able to extract by having a larger piece of the pie engagement.
So let us just wind up with the session, but before that, I would like to have closing remarks from all the speakers, one by one, starting from Roberto and Saad. So what would be your closing remarks related to this topic, related to the way we actually conducted the webinar, etc.?
Yeah, no, look, I enjoyed the conversation. A lot of great feedbacks from all the panelists and all the awesome people attending today. I think one takeaway for me is that technology is only a means to an end. It's not an end. And that successful education companies will have to help recreate the pillars that make schools and universities valuable. So we talked a lot about these communication tools, right? Zoom, WebEx, Microsoft Teams. Those are great for interactions and communications, right? But what happens once the student completes a class session? We were talking right now about the user experience and the engagement. So how do you continue providing the community, the student interactions, the overall immersive learning experience that makes schools experience so special, right? To me, this opened up a conversation on really rethinking about the whole experience, moving beyond just the pure technology or solutions that now technology vendors are very vocal, of course, now on pushing communication tools, and I represent one of those. But I don't think that is the solution. We should spend more time on the problem, and the problem is how effective is learning? How do we measure outcome? How do we create role models? How do we incentivize lifelong learning? How do we change mindset along those lines? So I take the chance to thank you for setting up this session. Very interesting topic, very relevant, and very well done. So thanks everyone for attending.
All right. Thank you, Roberto. So, Abe, would you like to comment? Any closing remarks?
Again, I second everything Roberto said. It was a great discussion, and I think just to touch on, I think everybody touched on this indirectly. I think the interaction or the customer experience aspect of this whole process needs to be really looked into deeper, because obviously we are in art, in a new norm kind of scenario. So this is something that I think more and more discussions should be had, so we can actually get somewhere where people would agree to at least a baseline for these tech companies and non-tech companies to find a common ground. So yeah, looking forward to see what's happening there. Edtech, has been moving slowly, but I think in the last 6 months, finally got a rapid response. So yeah, that's where we're gonna end it.
All right. So, Kia, and closing remarks?
Yes. So thank you so much for hosting. It was lovely to be here with all of you today. I think my closing remarks is, in essence, how do you keep a human connection through technology? I think the world is shifting to tech, but it's really important to keep those personal connections there, be it in consulting, any kind of knowledge sharing, or edtech. So I think that's really the essence and the focus. And for anyone looking to digitally transform, please do get in touch with us at getbe.com. Of course, have to, as a startup founder, plug that too. So if there's anywhere that we can help, please let us know. We'd love to get in touch and to hear from you. Thank you so much.
All right. So I would like to hear from Rohan.
As in my book, we promote the concept of growth set, which is my patent concept that I've been teaching to startups across the globe, and coming together with 100 experts from 20 countries to help all the startups really understand what we mean by that. I give growth set a mathematical formula that is skill set plus mindset plus tool set. What skill set your startup needs to propel further? What mindset do you need to adopt? You have to be lean, mean, and agile. What tool set do you need? So whether it be COVID or post-COVID or any situation. So our formula and recipe for success lies in our concept called growth set, and that is very important for me. And with every client I work with, I propose the same model of growth set. So I would like to end saying that once you have identified the skill set, mindset, and tool set, that will take you not just that will help you cope not just with this pandemic or COVID situation, but any other challenges in the future. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the discussion.
All right. Thank you so much. So let us just move on to Laura.
Great. Yeah, thank you all so much. So I think I just have, my final takeaway point would be, in your greatest obstacle often lies your greatest opportunity, both personally and within your business. So it's as much as you can to switch into abundance mindset and away from a scarcity mindset, which I know is can be challenging given the times that we're going through. I think secondly, given the nature of this discussion today, it's that constant and continuous and never-ending learning is just so important for all of us to ensure that we remain adaptable and relevant to our customers and continue to grow from that point of view. And something that's really supported me in my next evolution in the business has really been coming back to why I've started, and that bigger why. What's the bigger purpose of my business? Because with so much kind of chaotic, chaos around us, it can be easy to almost leave that or kind of get distracted from it. So really tuning back into why have you started your business? What are you trying to achieve? What's the bigger kind of mission with it? And then from that place, really, how can you best serve your audience, your clients? But thank you all so much again for your time. It has been a very interesting, insightful conversation.
All right. Thank you so much. And finally, we have Saad. Saad, what would be your closing remarks?
First and foremost, thank you guys very much for putting this together. I think this is a very timely topic, and it's great to hear other consultants and founders talking about the matter. So it's great to connect us, and I think it ties in with my point. It's very important today that we are connected, that we are discussing, whether it's around a panel, whether it's school discussions, whether it's classes. We have to stay connected no matter what happens, whether a pandemic hits or whether it's another issue. And I think it's an opportunity to realize that we have a foundation with technology to be able to be immune from almost everything, but we're not there yet. And we're seeing a lot of the flaws today that are appearing. And this is a chance for a rebirth for education technology and for us to be able to be better prepared going forward, no matter what happens. And it's about people first. And I think I've heard this from Roberto, from Tia. They mentioned the same thing, and I fully believe that it's about people, and we need to find a way to connect people together, and people learn together and help one another during times like this. And I believe as humans we'll be able to solve for any crisis that comes ahead of us. I'm very confident. Thank you guys very much.
All right, thank you so much. So I'm providing the link for all the participants in the chat window. So all the speakers can also share their feedback. So it's really, really valuable for us. And there is always a scope for improvement, as what I believe. And I would like to thank all the speakers for joining in. And I would like to thank our partners for supporting and trusting LAFFAZ and Venture Central. And at the end, the special thanks goes to NX Investments for enlisting us into this event, creating and understanding the connection, creating the connection between LAFFAZ and Venture Central, and giving us this platform.